All right. Now call the meeting to order. The time is 9 a.m. And we'll proceed with item 2, approval of the agenda. The recommendation reads that the agenda for the Police Services Board meeting of Wednesday, September 27th, 2023 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover? I'll take Rob. A seconder? Dory. All in favor? Motion is carried. Are there any declarations of interest? No. There are no presentations. There are no delegations. So we'll move to item 6.1, the minutes of the previous meeting held on May 24th, 2023. Recommendation reads that the Police Services Board minutes from May 24, 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Dory. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Rob. Is there any discussion on this set of minutes? None. All in favor? Motion is carried. Under item 7.1, communications petitions, there are no action items. Under 7.2, we have several items. Item A is a thank you card from South Grenville District High School. Is there any discussion on this item?
We did do 2. Did we do 2 awards?
I can't remember.
Through you, Chair, I believe we did 2 bursaries, but we only received a thank you card from 1 student. I can follow up with the brochures with the high school.
No, I think it's good form that they did thank us. The second one does so.
All right. Item B is correspondence from the OPP regarding the police record check revenue to municipalities. Is there any discussion on this item? So we have a recommendation under item 7.2 that reads that the information items be received, noted, and filed. Do I have a mover? Gory, a seconder? Rob, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to reports. The report under 8.1 is the police services report for the months of April to June 2023, provided by the detachment commander. Newfield?
Stefan Neufeld, yes, sir.
Close. Thank you. Good.
I will just do a quick intro. Chair, your worship, and sorry to have my back to you. I don't like that, but I'm pleased for that. And Councillor, can you hear me on? Oh, do I have to hit that or?
Nope, you can hear you, Rob.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So pleasure to meet everyone. I am in my 29th year of policing. My normal detachment is the Upper Ottawa Valley, which is Pembroke, Petawawa. I was asked to assist in Grenville County during the summer, late summer, while Inspector Kingsley does a secondment to our East Region headquarters, which is where he is now. This will be my 4th command. I'm fairly experienced as far as detachment commands. My background throughout my career would have been all frontline, emergency response, and traffic. So those are my fortes, if you will. Not to say that I'm not familiar with other stuff, but I've always felt I've had a very strong influence in those worlds. Happy to be here, getting a lay of the land. Thank you very much for having me at your meeting. I do see that this report is April, June, so we are in fact a full quarter behind, and I don't know if if that's how we do business here, or if I thought we would have been presenting on the most recent quarter, but so I'm all that to say, I did bring Sergeant Cadier with me only because he will have the background to discuss. I mean, I can read numbers off to you, but they don't mean anything to me. I can look and kind of see trends and kind of compare, like from what I have, and I'll make a couple comments, but as far as making qualified interpretations of your statistics without having the full background, this being my first meeting, I wouldn't be qualified to do that. So with all due respect to the board, what I can see is overall looking at the numbers, and of course I'm comparing them to my other commands, numbers are pretty good. Are there ways that we can improve them? The answer is absolutely. How I've always viewed my role, especially as of late, we know cash is king, right? Money is everything. What I view my role is as the sort of chief of police, if you will, is how can I reduce our calls for service at the end of the day? That's what I'm looking to do. Are there ways to streamline things? Are there ways to deal with prolific callers? Are there ways to deal with repeat offenders? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. And that's how I view my role. And that's how I've been, I'm going to say pretty successful in the city of Pembroke and the surrounding area in reducing the billable calls for service. One thing before we do leave is the other piece, and I don't know if there's, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I don't know if there's an established protocol with the town of Prescott as far as if there is a major incident. We have one in Upper Ottawa Valley, Pembroke, where if there's something going down, I have a direct line to you and say, this is what's going down. Obviously, I can't give you the minutia about the call for service, but you're going to see an increased police presence on this street. We're aware of an incident, and if you can forward that to his worship. Does that exist here?
Not that I know of.
So during my tenure here, we're gonna establish that like today.
Great. How long
So-
is the tenure?
Well, okay. So they have officially on paper, they have said 3 months.
Okay.
Now, I fell for that before where they said, hey, can you go to another detachment because we need a bilingual detachment commander, which I am. We need a bilingual just for 3 months. And 3 months turned into a year. So with all due respect to everybody in your community, I won't be here till the end of my career. I made a commitment to Upper Ottawa Valley Pembroke when I applied for that job. I said at the time, I said I have 7 years left, and I know it's very difficult. Like you want to have those relationships built. That doesn't happen overnight. That can sometimes take years to build, right? So when I applied for my job as detachment commander in Pembroke, obviously doing my due diligence, I read the last 6 months of police service board reports and said, okay, well, what are they looking? And the common thread was, we just want consistency. We just want somebody that we can trust and get to know and stuff. So part of my sales pitch, if you will, when I applied for the job was I said, I have 7 years left. If I'm successful, this is it for me. This is not a stepping stone for me. This is not I'm here for 2 years and then I'm out the door onto my next thing. This is it. I made a commitment to that community, which I want to honor. When I was asked to come down and help, I'm more than happy to help. But I made it very clear to our new East Region Command, and there have been some changes there that I'll bring to the board's attention as well, that this is not the end for me. If things were different, maybe, but I'm here to help only. So all that to say, to close the loop, 3 months, I said I will be here till the 31st of December. Maybe a couple of weeks into January, but this is not I won't be retiring here. How about that?
Fair enough.
Is that fair? So in the interim, there are some things that I have seen over the course of 29 years that work well in communities. There are some things that I think the town of Prescott would benefit from. Looking at your previous report, I think the number of foot patrol hours is very weak. I'm a huge proponent of foot patrol. I've always thought that is the one thing that we in the OPP really fall short of. When I took over in Pembroke, we were at an all-time low. In 2017, I think our foot patrol hours were like 52 over the course of a year. In 2022, we were north of 300. So that, because it's a priority for me, and people say, oh, you're getting punished and you put it, nobody that's doing foot patrol is being punished. You are, if you're walking downtown Prescott and you are now the face of the OPP and you're coming in there to shop or whatever, and, oh, hey, how are you? And you want to have some surly OPP officer, well, hey, like I'm being punished. Absolutely not. That people that are doing the foot patrols are there because they want to be. That's a priority for me. If you want to call it good old fashioned community engagement, that's a priority for me. So during my time here, I certainly want to see those numbers spike. Sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place.
Oh, this is good.
Do we want to get into the, you just want to get into the, as far as the numbers go, and then we can kind of see where the conversation takes us? We'll do the actual reporting business.
Yep.
Are we good with that?
Yep, perfect.
So for the, so as you can see, some of the numbers appear to be high because it's a quarterly report. So when we look at these, you'll see like year to date in June, we've had an increase. For example, sex assaults, we're up nearly 56%. Just so you know, we have investigations that are ongoing. It'll show that they've been reported. Investigations such as that do take time, and there have been charges laid, but down the road, so past June. So it won't show the clearance rates in terms of a drop in those investigations or clearance rate. So yes, they may seem high, but overall review was done prior to Inspector Neufeld arriving, that we're looking at more of the violent crime statistics in terms of the clearance rates, where they've been misinterpreted. And we're looking at, they should be cleared differently. So we'll see a higher clearance rate for those such as like break-in enters, theft overs, theft unders, assaults in that regard. So when you take a look at the sex assaults, we've had, as you can see, we've had an 8 for the month of, for the April to June. We had elderly home, 3 YO sex assaults, and that's young offenders. There's 2 still under investigation, and there's also 1 still under investigation with a 3-year-old. So these are still ongoing. Assaults were up by 2. So proportionately, they're namely domestic assaults. So we're trying to engage with our MCERT groups in terms of how can we better help individuals that are struggling through hard times and engaging with them. Our robberies we've had 0 up to date. Other crimes against persons, we're at 0%. That's anything from harassment, those type of uttering threats. So we've had a 9 for 9 for the time period from 22 to 23. Break-in enters have increased from 2 to 5. 2 were unfounded, deemed to be mental health calls for the same person in 2 days in a row. 1 was a B&E, which turned out to be a squatter within the town of Prescott, and that person has been located and charged. Unfortunately, not for this time period. It'll show up for the next one. We've had a B&E from a C-can container, where tools were stolen. Again, we've engaged with our CSCU officers. That's our community, they do break and enters at property crimes and drugs. So they're engaged, looking at trends, and they have people of interest, and they have laid some charges. Again, unfortunately, not for this time period. We've had 3 break and enters to storage lockers. Nothing was taken, but all the locks were cut. So if you take a look, if we flip the page and we look at the clearance rates, as you can see, we've taken a drop in our, from year to date, from 2022, from 78% down to 66%. Again, we're addressing this by, we've looked at a few months prior and they've been corrected, but we found that, again, April to June, we're going to be we have a light duties officer going through them and clearing them properly, so the clearance rates will increase. Property crimes have, clearance rates have increased, so that's a good sign. Again, that's hard work from our officers on the road doing traffic stops and the patrols that are totally opposite from what you see in billable. And on your last page, an increase of 187 patrol hours. That is not calls for service. These are officers driving within the community alone.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You said the property crime clearance rate is up.
We're doing traffic stops where we've had suspicious vehicles and they're loaded with various items and charged. And so we've had basically 2 to 3 of these individuals that we've had information on, where the officers, and we call them boots on the ground, not our specialized units, which is CSCU, they get engaged as we go along, where they've done proactive work and they've solved quite a few crimes within the area of break and enters with tools and stuff. Our drug crime.
Sorry, is the board aware of what street crime is? Like that unit exists here?
No. Street crime?
Yes.
All right. So we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
So within the detachment, we have a crime unit, the old fashioned detectives. What they found was they left a lot of the drug work and property crimes to the frontline officers, which some were very engaged with it. Some, like anything you get good at, which you do a lot of, right? Some officers can be intimidated by doing drug work. Some are not. Some are very engaged with it. Some are very good at doing property crimes. They have local informants. Others do not. So what and this is across the province that this has happened. That happened in 2018. So within the OPP, they said, and I'll say this, initially, when I was in Pembroke, they said, we're going to take 4 officers from the front line and put them into street crime. This is a new unit. They're going to focus on drugs. And I said, absolutely not. I said, we're not going to do that. I said, that is going to cripple my front line. I said, you can have 2. And of course, it came down from on high. You're giving 4, end of discussion. Okay, you have a lot more spaghetti on your shoulders than I do. So there it is. Fast forward to 2023, I'm a believer. They are doing exceptional work in the area of public safety when it comes to property crimes and drugs in our community, which are getting more and more lethal. These are not just, kids smoking a joint. This is serious fentanyl where people are dying. What I have seen so far in my very early time here with our street crime, which I am having a meeting with them, I see them doing a lot of stuff outside of our area, and I just kind of want to refocus that. I mean, yeah, we have some major projects on the go that they're helping out with. That's great. That's not my priority. Let's bring that back into town here and focus on what we have in our backyard, which is what has happened. Anyway, that's what, when we say street crime, or CSCU is the acronym for it. The OPB is very big on acronyms. CSCU. And I'll put it to the board, if there was ever an appetite to get one of the, and I do that up in Pembroke, if there's ever an appetite to get one of these members in to talk about local issues, you let me know and we'll facilitate that for the next meeting.
I'm sure we'd really welcome that.
Yep. I'll put that as an action item for myself. Sorry, sir.
No.
I cut you off. I just wanted
Oh,
to.
that's fine. We also have a pilot project that started here in Granville County. And I know Inspector Newfeld has one also in Upper Ottawa, and there's now one in Leeds, which is, we call it our fraud unit. So we have roughly 2 members, plus the member in Leeds that basically investigates frauds that are below what our anti-racket unit would take, which are the larger frauds, or organized crime. So these officers are more engaged with the victim side of the investigations. So we're giving more of a victim approach to the investigations, but they're also solving some pretty good amounts of up to anywhere from so far $700 to $1 million, anywhere from paving scams to what do they call them?
The grandmother calls.
The grandmother calls, but the ones where the romance scams.
Oh, yeah.
So where some individuals have lost up to $150,000, and unfortunately, repeat offenders. So we have 2 members that are engaged in these, and I won't lie, their task load is very large because it's never ending, as you can see the fraud calls. So they've kind of taken over, and we have one officer who is very knowledgeable in the cryptocurrency side of things, which kind of out of a lot of the realm from more of the frontline officers because it's still new. So again, we'll see some large investigations with some charges leading to those. So there's some good work being done. As you can see, highlighted just a few areas here, and that's, the break and enters thefts. We've had sort of an increase of the theft overs, a trailer, a boat motor, motor vehicles, and basically thefts from motor vehicles. So over 5,000. We've made some arrests with the theft of trailers. We arrested an individual. We've also located a boat that was stolen out of the area, located in actually Nova Scotia. So again, unfortunately, it doesn't show up in this report. It shows up that there was a call for service, but there will be some clearance rates. We seem to have an increase in our shoplifting. We've had an increase mostly at the LCBO for Prescott, where and this is where our clearance has to change, but the LCBO, we know who the suspects are. We deal with them, but they don't want anything done. They just want them trespassed. So it becomes a billable call for you with really, we've solved it. But the trespass is, we end up trespassing them again and charging them with the trespass down the road. So we've seen an increase of that kind of call, along with the shoplifting of the Shoppers Drug Marts, where we've got not local, but organized crimes hitting up a lot of the 400 series Shopper Drug Marts, the drugstores for perfume and for fragrances, stuff like that. So.
Can I, and I'll just jump in.
Yep.
So the shoplifting spike is, I'm not familiar with the organized crime piece as far as them doing the shoplifting. What I can say is across the region, shoplifting is up. We're in unprecedented times where people are struggling. What I can say about my community in Pembroke is, and in the entire Upper Ottawa Valley, the shoplifting items, diapers, baby food, meat, like these are These are people that not necessarily, I mean, we have thieves in our community, but these are just everyday people that are struggling, and I need diapers for my kid. When we have a giant tiger in the downtown core of Pembroke, where they have now put baby food and diapers under, like what you used to have, like razor blades, like under the lock and key, and you had to get somebody. They have switched that to put the baby food in the diapers now. That's how bad it's gotten. So I'm not discounting the organized crime piece. What I'm saying, a lot of these spikes are also just everyday citizens that are trying to make it to the next week.
That's stuffed under master code.
Theft under is just anything that doesn't fall, unfortunately, under all these. So there's, so I can get to exactly what they are. But
Do you have other thefts for 11, but theft under master code?
so there's, that's, how can I put it? So when we do reporting under our system, unfortunately, there's two. Technically this here, and again, this is where we're going to correct it. The theft under master code should actually be part of that.
So with the LCBO, shoplifting, is that a corporate policy or is that local policy to not charge them with shoplifting?
Well, the corporate policy, what I can, sorry, I keep cutting off. I'm so
Oh, that's
sorry.
good. No, you.
And I keep going back to Pembroke. What I can say is, what we have in our discussions with the LCBO up there is that their corporate policy is if I'm an employee, I'm an LCBO employee, and I see Mr. Armstrong walk in, put a bottle under his coat and walk out, I do not engage. I would say, put that back. Like, they just walk out the store and call the police. There's no intervention. They do not want their employees to intercede in any sort of criminality.
Or get hurt.
So
And get hurt.
in terms of actually charging out trespass versus,
That could be up to the individual owner. We charge up in Pembroke. One thing I will say about the LCBO, they have excellent cameras. And it's always locals. It's not somebody traveling up from Toronto to come steal a bottle of vodka. It's some local addict that is, for whatever reason, struggling and goes in, steals it. And we send out the photo to our detachment internally and, Pat Armstrong shaved his beard though, and that's who it is. And we go lay the appropriate charges.
okay,
But if that is, at the end of the day, the victim, which is the LCBO, you can choose not to charge. That is totally within your realm of prerogative. They choose not to charge, so be it.
okay.
What would the penalty be for trespass?
I think
$60?
maybe, $60.
And shoplifting?
Pardon?
In shoplifting?
That's theft. That's completely different. Yeah. So technically, them stealing a bottle of liquor is theft. But the LCBO, at least the ones here, are saying, we just want them trespassed. Tell them not to come back or hurt.
Which for a shoplifter to see the inside of a court today, it's going to be pretty extenuating circumstances for that to happen. So by giving them a trespass notice saying you're not allowed to come in, you're not even allowed to come onto our property anymore. In my opinion, that is more of a punishment.
Thank you.
So for the time period of April to June, we had, in comparison to 22, we've dropped basically 200 billable hours for calls for service. And I can say that some of those hours are with our MCERT group, where that's our mobile crisis response team. They are phenomenal in our detachment. They are basically first responders as well. They attend calls for service. They deal with the individuals right then, right now, and they provide them with our mental health crisis nurses, solutions and recommendations for supports that frontline officers just don't have the time and the resources that the nurse would have. So they're doing phenomenal work, and we're not going back and dealing with the same individuals over and over. I'm not saying it's completely solved, because we do still have some repetition callers, but they're dealing with them, at a slower pace and trying to help them out. So.
Mr. Chair, the board is aware what MCERT does and it is, like that's been explained.
Have we talked about that, Cory?
Is that the mental health?
Yes.
Yes, we did. That was a
Partnership with the, okay.
Is that the same as, I have this circled here, if you,
Go.
okay with
Yep.
you? The safeguard officers, is that the same thing?
No, safeguard is completely different.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So, if we go to the last page, where we had our public complaints, previously we had two. One has been dealt with for service conduct. One is still under investigation. At the time of this report, it has been dealt with, and it's, you'll see zeros for the next period. As I stated, a number of patrol cruiser hours, and that is just not doing calls for service. That is just police officers patrolling the streets of Prescott, 587 hours. Marine patrol, we have a designated marine officer for that, so we've had 57.5 hours. And foot patrol hours of 31. Inspector Neufeld spoke of that earlier, and we'll see an increase of foot patrol hours for the next periods.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so the marine patrol hours, is that on a boat?
Yes.
Okay, and is that checking like drinking and
Everything.
and all that?
All like drinking, sufficient life vests, all the
Okay.
equipment that is required, that kind of thing. So,
To the inspector's point, like here we got 57 hours in marine patrol and 31 hours of foot patrol, right? So I think you'd get more public endorsement with the foot patrol.
That's just my opinion.
And then
Every detachment, sorry to cut you off, Your Worship, every detachment commander has different priorities.
But
Patrol happens to be one of mine.
I think I'd be in favor of that, more foot patrol, because you always hear that from the public. Right?
Sure you do.
And it probably would help deter crime, or not just crime, but the look of crime, like I had someone tell me the other day about our benches are occupied by meth heads sometimes.
I don't doubt it.
So even foot patrol might help with that. And last question I have on this part was the school patrol hours. What's that exactly, and how can we increase that?
Okay, so one of the things that I have always been a big believer in, September, and I did it here as probably one of my first initiatives. The build up to back to school, so the week before Labor Day, every day, and maybe you saw it in the media, maybe you didn't, heavy on the media presence, school buses next week. I know some schools have started, but traditionally, for most of us, after Labor Day, school's back in. So the first week, heavy on the media presence, school's back, watch for kids, with the red lights on the school buses, the stop arms popping out, heavy on the media presence. The first 2 weeks of September after Labor Day, we do what is referred to as a focus patrol, or this is a dedicated daily activity where officers are stationed, and I've done this in every command. Officers are stationed in as many as we can hit. Certainly our prolific ones where we know we have issues are focused on speeders in the school zones. And my message, of course, at the end of the day, it is the officer's discretion, but my message to them is my expectation is zero tolerance. And I find that really sets the tone. It's a 2-week blitz, and we laid, I don't know how many, but I looked at the numbers after the first week, and they were good. Usually the second week is obviously going to be quieter because everybody, oh my God, the cops. and things start to settle down. But we had some good numbers, which of course is a good and a bad thing, right? I mean, I'm not a fan of somebody rocketing through a 40 zone doing 80 kilometers per hour, but there it is, it's dealt with. And hopefully he or she slows down in the future. So that really set the tone. And not only that, all the school bus drivers see it, and more importantly, all the parents see it. So as far as school patrols go, that's what was done the first 2 weeks of September. After that, it's kind of like a hit and miss, like when there's an opportunity, or if there's calls about from any of the school staff about, there's we're having problems with on this one school bus where their cars are repeatedly going through the school bus arm. We can target that or specific school zones.
Right.
That is annually. The first 2 weeks of September is a priority. At whatever detachment I'm sitting at, we are doing this focus patrol for the next 2 weeks. But always the buildup with the media the week before. Always.
Social media?
Social media. I do have to say, I am very impressed with the level of media engagement here at this office. I'm going to have to kind of step up our game in your end, I think. But they've been really, really good. So that is one thing they've been great with, is getting all of our messages out. And we'll continue that.
So we probably won't see these hours until like a March meeting, right? Because September, the next quarter, we're already a quarter behind. And it's this quarter. So
I don't know your schedule, like how, again, I'm sorry I keep comparing apples and, we would do our meetings in October because now you're gonna get the most recent quarter, so stuff is still fairly fresh. But that's just, I mean, if this is how it's done, this is how it's done, and I'm at the board service.
We're in kind of a transition here as far as meetings and boards and stuff too. So
Okay.
there's a lot of changes going on probably in the next few months that may make this.
We're combining 2 or 3.
Yeah, so I'm aware of that.
Make it easier for you guys not to go to meetings early.
Yeah, you know what? So that was obviously a huge topic up in the valley. Certainly, the city of Pembroke wrote a letter to the Soljan's office saying, you know what, and Prescott would be no different, although I'm not trying to insert myself in anybody's business, but the city of Pembroke said, listen, we gave up our local police service to go with the OPP, and now you're telling us that we're losing control of our board, and that's BS, and we want to stay status quo. And they approached me and said, do you have a problem with that? I said, again, I'm at the board service. You want to have meetings monthly? We'll have meetings monthly. You want to have meetings, well, not weekly, but I have one board that does it quarterly, and I have one board that meets monthly. Which monthly, I'll be honest, I mean, I'm at the board service. Monthly, there's not always a ton to talk about. I like quarterly. But there are other detachment commanders and just like you have, well, maybe you don't, but there are, I'm sure, some municipal councillors that in the province that are very engaged in their communities. And then there are others that just like to use the title, oh, I'm a councillor in town, and then never go to a meeting. That's the same for detachment commanders, unfortunately. You will have, and maybe you have seen that in your tenure here, you will have some detachment commanders that are very engaged and others that are not. The mayor that I deal with, primarily in the city of Pembroke, he told me that when they were talking about these detachment boards, there were some people that were saying, we haven't seen our detachment commander in like a year, which to me, that's a failure of leadership is what that is. A complete and utter failure of leadership. That said, in Upper Ottawa Valley, both police service boards that I currently have, Petawawa and Pembroke, have both opted to stay standalone. So I will have those boards still, and then the remaining municipalities will form a third board. So really nothing has changed for me. I was briefed by Sergeant Cadieux that there's going to be an amalgamation with, and I'm getting municipalities mixed up, Prescott and
Usually be,
Augusta.
Augusta. Sorry, I was going to say Alexandria, but that's not the right word. Augusta.
And Eversburg Cardinal.
Oh, yeah, Eversburg, I said.
they
Cardinal.
don't, they don't have a board as.
They don't have a board.
But they'll have a representative. My God, I can't talk today.
Yes, they do.
Oh, they do?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Okay.
And
So-
then in the north, we have,
Granville,
North Granville.
American.
Merrickville. That would be big area.
So,
Yeah. There's a third one too, isn't there?
No, there's just,
North Grenville?
It's five total.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, nothing changes for me. I don't know if there'll be really any changes. I mean, I can see how I know certainly the city, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school, the city of Pembroke wanted to retain a little bit of that control, which I get. And because they are, if you want to look at Upper Ottawa Valley, they are the hub, they are the biggest location. We have another municipality, Head Clara Mariah, it has a population of 300. You know, like a very minimal tax base, very minimal calls for service. They say, well, why should they, with a population of 300, have the same rights as us? Well, that's not up for me to decide, but anyway, so there was some discussions in that regard, but at the end of the day, the province supported them to stay standalone as well as Petawawa. And yeah, so we'll have 3 boards and I'll go to 3 meetings.
All right. Is there any other discussion on this?
Did you want to just tell us about a safeguard inspector, what they do?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can tell you what they do. I don't know exactly all the activities they've done during this quarter here, but Safeguard is basically a community safety program that affords, we'll say, victims of crime, particularly break and enters, the opportunity to speak to a police officer, usually one of our auxiliaries that are trained in certainly crime prevention, be it, so I have my house broken into, the officer investigates, the report goes in. One of the follow-ups is always, would you be interested in speaking to somebody about Safeguard? Yes, I would. So the officer or the auxiliary goes to their house and says, okay, so here are certain things that you can do to maybe prevent stuff from happening again. I see that you were broken into in the month of February when you were away on vacation in Cancun. Were you posting all over social media, hey, I'm in Cancun, my house is empty? You know, stuff like that. Post your photos when you come back. Just stuff like that. Make sure your driveway is plowed. You know, maybe have lights on a timer. Maybe don't leave newspapers or mail piled up at the front, indicating all these indicators that people, certain elements of our society look for. They look for this stuff. There's a reason they target these people. I mean, is it 100% foolproof? The answer is no, but are there certain steps that individuals can take to protect themselves? When we look at the theft from motor vehicles, does the town of Prescott have the Lock It or Lose It program?
I never heard of that one.
Okay, action item number 2. So we have a very simple program in Upper Ottawa Valley, and it's not just Upper Ottawa Valley, but we wholeheartedly endorse it. We have members go in parking lots and look for potential victims. And it's very simple. Lock it or lose it. Don't have, you know, your purse sitting in an unlocked vehicle or with the window down where somebody could just reach in, take your wallet and keep on walking. Let's prevent people from being victims as opposed to just waiting for them to be victims. Very simple program. Leave that with me.
Okay. And was your first action item to keep the chair aware of what's going on?
We're going to have a discussion about that.
Okay. Because we have precedent just this week.
Yeah, where the streets, so, which was what brought that topic up.
Okay.
Because we have a protocol in place in Upper Ottawa Valley where I'm in contact with the police service board chairs or the CAOs in the other municipalities. If there is something major going down, which I can brief the board today that it was a serious domestic assault, potential weapons, where we had a high presence of police officers in the community cordoning off streets. Certainly, you need to know this, and you would inform the mayor, who would at some point inform the board. That is something that has to happen immediately. Obviously, I can't tell you, oh, well, here's the guy that we're looking for, and here's everything. You will get a high-level briefing, so to speak, and say, here's what we're doing. We're aware of the incident. We have a high level that you're going to see officers in tactical gear, which you may have. That's something that then the city, the town can put out on their Facebook page, say, please, I'll take that with a grain of salt, because sometimes when you say, hey, stay off of Edward Street, that brings more people there, because everybody wants to get, hey, let me take a selfie with all these cops here, so that sometimes backfires on us, but that is our world. But at the very least, the message can get out there. So that's something that you and I will, I'll give you a card with the phone number that you call the 24/7 number, not the number that's on the card. The back will have my private number, and we will establish that contact where I can say, listen, you need to advise the mayor right now that this is going down. We have officers in the area, a major incident, whatever. We're gonna have the chopper in it, whatever it is. But that's a line of communication that has to happen. Okay. Just one last thing, just before we close off on the stats, only because the statistics are what they are. They can be manipulated in a lot of ways. When you look at and certainly on the violent crime side of the house, a 55% spike in sex assaults. Oh my God, like what's going on in our town? I just want the board and everybody to be aware that there are, as we know, as more research is done, especially when it comes to sex assaults, how many of these go unreported for years? I would sometimes see a spike and view that as, you know what, yes, certainly 55% wants us to dig in a little deeper and see what's going on. But the very fact that community members are comfortable coming to the OPP to report these crimes, I think that should be celebrated, and not because there are many people that would say, you know what, I'm not even going to go to the cops because they're not going to do nothing. I'm just going to carry this burden for the rest of my life. And so the fact that I just want to say that the spike in sex assaults is not necessarily, it's a horrible thing. It's a victim of crime, a victim of violent crime. But the fact that there is confidence and in the abilities of our officers that they will receive the help that they need is something that we should be proud of.
Can I just ask a couple of questions about
Please.
about the stats? So one of the things that stood out to me was neighbor disputes was up, well, no, not up. There's 25 of them this year so far.
Yeah.
For weighted hours of 95 hours. If you get frivolous neighbor disputes, like their dog was on my yard.
Yeah.
Can you are you able to tell them, look, this is BS, don't call us for this crap?
I can't tell people not to call the police.
Okay.
I know what you're saying. I can't tell people to call the police. What I can say is, I'm sure, without even looking at your numbers, I'm sure, because I call these COVID numbers, which we may still be seeing the tail end of that. During COVID, there are certain numbers that spiked, and I don't mean like 10%. I mean like a 50, 60, 70%. Suspicious vehicles, suspicious persons, noise complaints, neighbor disputes, because all of a sudden everybody's working from home. And, oh my God, Jeff plays the drums? Are you kidding me? I'm calling the cops. I didn't know that. Well, you didn't know that because you were gone during the day, and he played his drums during the day when he knew you were gone. But now you're working from home. Now it's a problem. Now they're calling the cops.
Gotcha.
That might still be the issue. The other piece that needs to be looked into is how robust is the bylaw department here? Because lots of these neighbor disputes are in fact bylaw issues.
That's why I asked, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
we do-
those,
That's one of the main complaints that counselors would get and probably CAO and our clerks would hear. Neighbor disputes, again, how often that escalate into a police call?
yeah. So I think, and although I am a commissioned officer and I represent the commissioner of the OPP, this is not the commissioner saying this, this is Steph Neufeld saying this. So let's put that on the record. I think you are going to see changes in the future as far as what billable calls for service we will be giving the municipalities. If the board is aware, in Hamilton, city of Hamilton police no longer respond to noise complaints. Oh, my buddy's blasting the stereo. I don't care.
Right.
We don't care. We're not responding to that. So if,
I see this one noise bylaw.
okay, well, there you go. So that's not going to be a huge, that'll be a negligible amount on the bill, but I can tell you in the city of Pembroke, that is a pretty high number. Neighbor disputes, unless there is a public safety issue, like he's threatening you with violence or something like that, you know what? Call bylaw.
Right.
I think, and again, to be clear, this is Steph Neufeld's opinion. I'm not speaking for the commissioner, but I think there will be changes. I think there has to be changes in what we're billing municipalities for. I think there has to be.
That's good.
But like anything, that's a work in progress. But the very fact that Hamilton has started this ball rolling, I don't see, one of the things that, if you are aware or not, our current commissioner, Tom Creek, who I am a big fan of, came from York Regional. He was the deputy chief. He was 100% going to be the chief, and the OPP was able to lure him away. Now, when he showed up, I was a little hesitant because I was always a fan of, the officer that started as a constable, just like me, was a sergeant, staff sergeant, inspector, and worked their way up through the ranks. And oh my God, this person became the commissioner. I love that. So now all of a sudden you just got a guy from York who just jumps ship and becomes our commissioner. I don't know. Well, what a breath of fresh air he has been for us. And he has implemented some magnificent changes in the OPP because he comes from an outside agency. Well, we're going to do it this way. Or he says, why are you doing it this way? Oh, well, we've always done it that way. Yeah, but why? He is, as opposed to some people that have come up the ranks like I have and just accept lots of things as the status quo. Why are we billing municipalities for noise complaints? That's not a police issue.
Good.
You don't need a gun or a pepper spray or a taser at a noise complaint call. You don't. Right? Why is the municipality paying for a police officer to go there? So I think there are changes in the future. But it's a work in progress. But the fact that Hamilton PD has started that, and of course that resonated across the province, right? Like, oh my God, Hamilton's not going to noise complaint unless there's a public safety issue. It's just somebody blasting their stereo or somebody playing their drums. We're not going. We have far more important crimes, victims to assist. We're not going to a noise complaint.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this? No. I thank you both. That was excellent information on all this.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I have a recommendation that the police services report for April to June 2023 be accepted as presented. Do I have a mover? Rory, a seconder? Rob, all in favor? Motion carried. All right, the report under 8.2 is an update regarding a closed circuit television grant program. The report is for information only. Matthew Armstrong, CAO Treasurer, will speak to the report.
Very much, Mr. Chair. So this is just a follow-up from our previous meeting where we did apply for the CCTV grant program through the province. We were successful. Based on our application, There was 551 violent crimes that occurred in the town of Prescott between 2020 and 2022. And which kind of, if you just take the number of days and divide it through, then it's basically one every 2 days. So really what this is aimed at doing is there's 5 areas within town that really highlighted where most of these crimes occur. And that's where we'll focus the CCTV program. So our next step is to go to RFP. We'll be looking for someone to design the program, to deliver the equipment, as well as setting up and install. And we have to have the funds spent by March 31st, 2024. Our next step is to meet with the OPP, confirm exactly those areas, make sure that that's what we're looking for, determine the coverage that we're looking for, the quality of the images. And then along with that, when we're going through the purchasing process, also developing the policies to make sure that we have a secure system, that it protects privacy as well as limits access to for who can access it, as well as for what purposes. This builds on the policy that we passed in 2020 for the town of Prescott for CCTV and surveillance video equipment, and it will be a little bit more robust as we move through this project.
Is there any discussion on this?
Quickly, Inspector, you said that the LCBO has really good cameras.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that I've noted in the past is like some crimes go uninvestigated because the camera quality's not good enough.
Yep.
Can we make sure that our CCTV is high resolution so that it's actionable by these gentlemen?
Absolutely. I think there's no point in putting it in if you can't figure out what you're looking at. So that's certainly something that we want to consider. Obviously, anytime that you attach it within a building, the ability to hook it to internet and things like that certainly increases the quality. So, but that's really what we want to stress in our RFP, is that we would rather take fewer cameras of higher quality than lots of cameras of really low quality. So, so those are the types of things that we'll certainly be looking at, as well as, exactly what features are there in terms of, do we have to get up and reposition the camera if we're finding it's not, capturing exactly what we need, those types of things. Also, a lot of times, the higher you're up you put a camera, the less detail you get. So when you sometimes see in the paper, it's a high angle, and so you don't necessarily see a lot of the face, things like that. So camera placement and height and things like that will be very important as well.
And unless there's any objections, I will connect you with our street crime unit, because they would be in a far better position to say where these cameras should be located, especially at high volume areas where they know there's a lot of incidents, or even intersections where if we need to capture license plates, that can be reviewed.
Absolutely.
Anything else? All right, let's move on to the report under 8.3 is an update regarding the Grenville County Detachment Police Services Board proposal. This report is for information only. Matthew Armstrong will speak to the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So referred to it a little bit earlier, but as of April 1st, we are to move to the proposal that was put forward. One board will be for North Grenville and Maripole Wolford. The second board will be Augusta, Eversburg Cardinal, and the town of Prescott. One thing when we were going through the application process, or kind of the analysis, is that the town of Prescott, first of all, has a much higher density than our neighbors. So we have approximately between 800 and 900 people per square kilometer, whereas Augusta and Eversburg Cardinal are down in the 20s. Automatically, when you put a lot of people in a close proximity, that does tend to drive up people annoying each other, and then calls for service. I think that was part of the conversation, is that the town of Prescott is slightly different than our neighboring municipalities, similar to how Pembroke is different from their more rural neighbors. So that's something certainly that we'll work through as we move forward. But the intention is to continue to report on the crime stats as those three separate municipalities. And so that we can kind of focus and then find like programs where we can endorse those, community messages, things like that. And then also those unlike programs where we're maybe focused on a certain area to address what we're seeing in the stats or what we're seeing from an intelligence standpoint.
Any further questions? All right, let's move on then. Under item 9.1, this is the bylaw update report by Matthew Armstrong, CAO Treasurer. Please provide the board with your update.
So again, to you, Mr. Chair, so each meeting, we kind of just highlight some of the things that we're doing from a town perspective and also in relation to what we work with the OPP on. So we continue to see homelessness in the municipality. The mobile crisis response team does a fantastic job working with us and working with all of the various agencies to try and provide assistance to individuals that are experiencing homelessness, and that might be temporary shelter, it could be mental health resources, it could be social assistance resources. And so they, both our bylaw and the mobile response team work really well in trying to make contact, to build a relationship, to offer the services, but ultimately people can't be forced to services. And so that's always the struggle that we work with, but certainly it's not for lack of resources and trying to find a path for them to change their circumstances. Just from a parking perspective, we continue to focus on overnight parking in the winter months, and then 2-hour parking blitz in the downtown, as well as just general parking violations, such as you can't park on the sidewalk, you can't leave your car under a cover on the road, things like that. So, we're continuing to work that. A number of property standards issues this year. 2 went to the Property Standards Committee. Both are being dealt with. And then we just have our regular property standards types issues. And then unfortunately, we weren't able to run a rabies clinic this year due to lack of availability of resources from the public health as well as from local veterinarians. But we are continuing to make sure that dogs are tagged and also have their rabies shot.
Is there any discussion on this? All right, let's move on then to item 10.1. It's a staff report from the Public Police Service Board meeting of October 20th, 22 regarding the CKW inquest, intimate partner violence. Matthew Armstrong, CEO Treasurer, will speak to this item, please.
Thank you very much. And so we did talk about it last October. A couple of our newer councillors wanted to bring it back, as well as create a bit of a media education program and really speaking to some of the recommendations that were out there. So I'll kind of pass it over to the OPP to talk a little bit about some of the things that they've done. And then we can talk about how we want to kind of roll out an education piece so that those that are suffering from domestic know where they can get resources and things like that. So kind of putting you on the spot, and I apologize for that.
You're not putting me on the spot. So I'm intimately aware, obviously this was a huge issue in the valley for us. And I sat in on that inquest in 2022, which was held in the city of Pembroke. I'm going to be in 2024. I'm going to be speaking at the provincial, I guess it's the provincial meeting that's going to be held in Pembroke on, myself and the critical incident commander that was in charge of that day is going to be explaining the explaining the incident. And then my piece will be, what has the OPP done in response to the recommendations? So right off the hop, obviously this is, the commissioner is well aware of this being reviewed at a high level. There was 84 recommendations that came out, not all directed at the OPP, to be clear. But there were certain recommendations that were directed at us. One of them being further assistance to victims of crime, specifically intimate partner violence or sex assaults. The commissioner, being aware of that, is in the process of creating it's going to be a unit housed out of our headquarters in East Region that is going to be specifically trained detectives that will be, we used to have, I mean, like everything else, what's old is new. We used to have what was referred to as an abuse issues coordinator. These were detective constables that, again, you get good at what you do a lot of, right? If I do a lot of interviews, well, I'm going to get really good at interviewing. If I do a lot of search warrants, I'm going to be great at writing search warrants. Any officer can take an interview. Any officer can write a search warrant. They can't all do it well. So I can't stress that enough. Certainly, with all due respect to the commissioner, we have staffing challenges across the province. And when you say, oh, I'm going to create 20 detectives, yeah, maybe one day, what can Steph Neufeld do immediately? And what I did in Upper Ottawa Valley was I brought a civilian on board, and her role is, it's called a victim specialist. And her only role is, and my vision in the next 2 years, when I retire, that this is going to be kind of my swan song going out, was she just landed, FYI, in September. This is a civilian, very well trained, very experienced in victim support. My intention is to build an entire team around her, dedicated detectives within Upper Ottawa Valley that deal exclusively with her. Someone from our court, Pembroke being the hub location, we have our county courthouse there. A dedicated crown that is going to deal exclusively with IPV cases and the victim specialist, vicars, VWAP, probation and parole. These are all people that are going to feed her information to ensure that victims' needs and are met and that they are being connected to the right resources. The fact is, although it is right in our, pardon me, right in the OPP's strategic plan, supporting our victims is one of our duties. We all get that. It is in the Ontario and the Canadian Bill of Rights for support for victims. There are, and the Barutsky inquiry showed it, and I'm not trying to, Monday morning quarterback anything. Were there things that could have been done better? The answer is 100% yes, and the inquest showed that, as did those 84 recommendations. What can we do in the immediate? I mean, again, yeah, that's great that they're going to bring back this abuse issues coordinator. When that happens, I don't know. The OPP is like any government agency. Sometimes it's slow. What Steph Neufeld can do immediately was I created that position and put that in Pembroke because and sadly, because our numbers supported it as well. This was not done just to appease any of the parties that formed the committee, the inquest committee. This was done regretfully because our numbers support it, both on the domestic side and on the sex assault side. So that's not a great thing, but at the end of the day, if this improves support for our victims, then I will view that as a victory. Did that help?
Yeah, I think so. And so I think I'm just going to look at Caitlin and the here. So we have a kind of something that we can share on social media, that sort of thing, in relation to this.
Through you, Chair, I would recommend that we develop some sort of social media campaign. I thought that we could do multiple posts, gather information, and I think that is what the councilor's intents were. So that could be something that we could add under the public service announcement. Or work with our partners at the OPP too, if they have any kind of social media messaging that we can get out as well.
100%. What I can say locally is one of the first things I did when I got here was I had We have a couple officers who are in a light duty capacity. And what that means is they are not on the road. They're still highly functioning, highly trained officers. Just for whatever reason, they are not in a position to be on the road, providing meaningful work. Pardon me. Providing meaningful work for them falls onto me. One of the things that I am extremely concerned about, obviously, is our victims, IPV victims. And I had him go through from January 1st to current, all of our domestics and make sure that there's, heaven forbid that I know a birdseed situation, but any flags, like was there a notification that was missed? Was there somebody that was supposed to be contacted and didn't happen? And so that is a work in progress currently. Because the reality is we're all human beings. We do make mistakes. Sometimes when a domestic comes in at 4 a.m, the officer is tired, especially if they've done 3 night shifts in a row. Is it possible things get missed? Absolutely. That's why pencils have erasers. Stuff gets missed. This is just kind of, for me, as a little kind of back safe thing for like, okay, let's just go through everything. Let's slow it down. Is there something that got missed? Like, is there a suspect in here who, oh my God, his name popped up 4 times with 4 different girlfriends? That's somebody that needs a little bit more attention, which is exactly the Berusky situation, right? So that is being done currently for the board's awareness.
Great. All right, we'll move on. Sorry. There are no new items under new business. There are no questions from the media. And are there any suggestions for this month's public service announcement? See, the OPP has suggested a World Alzheimer's Day and Project Lifesaver.
Yeah. Board aware of this.
Unless there's any other suggestions, I don't see why we couldn't run with it.
Is everybody aware of what Lifesaver is?
Is that the button you push?
No.
Lifelock.
Lifeline?
Lifeline.
Lifeline?
Yeah, fair.
Lifesaver is originally sponsored by the Dementia Society, and it is a tracking. So as a former emergency response team member, one of our mandates was missing persons and search and rescue. Typically, when we would get a call about a missing child or missing elderly parent, we get the call several hours after the fact, because typically what happens is, oh, you're at wherever, you're out. Geez, where did mom go? Where did dad go? Or where did little Jimmy go? And you spend time searching. Did Jimmy go back to your place? So by the time, now the sun is starting to set and maybe it's in the fall, it's going to get cooler. We get the call, we're already behind by a couple of hours. And especially when the elements are changing, like it was 5 degrees this morning, time is always critical. So there is a program that the Dementia Society has that this is not, to be very clear, this is a community safety program that I endorse and I support it, but it's not an OPP program. It is a very separate entity. But we launched it in this year, actually, in Upper Ottawa Valley, and it got launched here as well, which is great. And what it is a bracelet that if you have as some and although it would originate, the genesis is with the Dementia Society, it can be applied to people with autism. It can be applied to people with acquired brain injuries. There's a myriad of people that might be prone to wandering. And what this is a little bracelet, and the OPP has a transmitter that basically can drive around. Well, we would go to the point last scene. We have a whole structure on how to deal with missing persons and have the antenna, and it just spins around. And I am not trained, so I'm not really in a position to qualify the radius of it, but then they spin it around and they can see if it locates. And it looks like such antiquated technology. Like if you think of the old satellite dishes, the big steel satellite dishes that people have in their yards, it's a smaller version of that on like a little plastic gun with those old radio headphones. It looks so foolish, but it works. each bracelet has its own, wavelength. And so if you've registered to the program, and so you would just call and say, I'd like to register, my dad who has wandered off twice now, I want to register him with Lifesaver. Your frequency is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, goes on. So if dad goes missing, the officer responds, and we have officers that are trained now. They bring out the technology, they switch to frequency 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and start searching. Oh, there he is. And they track it down. They also have it available. They put it on their car, and then they start doing circles around the neighborhood, ever expanding circles. And then it is fantastic. It is fantastic, especially for, like I said, individuals that have, children on the autism spectrum or elderly parents that are prone to wandering. It is fantastic. Again, it's a community safety initiative that I happen to believe in, especially with my background of missing persons.
Who would they approach for that?
They can approach us. We did a release, but if that's something that you want to put out locally to your community members, I can easily send a media release to you guys.
It might not be a bad idea for the homes.
There's, now when I did it in, I'm sorry, I keep talking about Pembroke. When I did in Pembroke, it was through a grant process because there is a financial cost to it. I want to say $200 to buy the band, and then I think $10 to buy a new battery. And I don't know how often you have to change the batteries. But when I did the grant for us up there, I wrote it so that the board would have the discretion. There was funds set aside, so not every elderly resident can afford a $300-400 hit for a wristband. So the grant was written so that the board on a case-by-case basis could review and offer to use those funds to purchase the band and 1-year supply of batteries. That's how I don't know how the grant was written down here, but that's how I did it up there. That was at the board's discretion, so.
And again, that would be with Constable Dave Holmes.
Okay.
He's been our backbone with regards to that, so.
Engaged officer.
So we're gonna go with that?
Yeah, so I think if we go with that as well as the intimate partner violence, and then just kind of following up on the some tips and tricks on keeping yourself and your property safe, locking your car, locking your vehicles. It's a simple lock you can put on the tongue of a trailer to keep people from doing things like that, as well as not posting on social media that you're away, mail, snow. So, we could take a look at doing a few of those types of media posts over the next several weeks and just to try and remind people that a lot of this is preventable. Just taking some simple steps.
Yeah, I think strategically, if we, as we move into October, maybe later October, early November, we do a safe winter driving one, because I'm imagining a lot of the residents here are commuters to Brockville or to Ottawa. As soon as the first snow flies, there's going to be cars in the ditch. Give yourself extra time, slow it down. If you have winter tires, put your winter tires on. Take the time to defrost your windows, for God's sakes. You see these people pulling onto the ramps, and I'm looking at, and they've just got this little wind. I'm like, oh my God, are you trying to kill yourself?
Last few mornings, I've noticed people driving with their windows down.
Yeah, look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good one for November. I am a big fan of that one. Yeah. And then in maybe January, as people start looking at winter vacations, we do that one, protect yourself. Don't announce that you're, have arrangements for your driveway to be plowed, lights on, that kind of stuff. We can look after all that.
Great.
If you want, Matt, we have a card, as the inspector has mentioned, the lock it or lose it. There is a card that we do hand out. We can forward that to you, so that it can assist when you guys send your blast outs. There's ideas and
Awesome. Thank you.
Just one last item. If we have complaints about speeders in town.
Yeah.
Right? For some reason, we hear the complaints more than you guys. The advice I've been giving them obviously is talk to you guys,
Call
but
us.
if they record a license plate, does that help you guys at all?
It's, the speeding is not going to be actioned later. Sometimes we can send a warning letter, depending on the circumstances, but that's just it is just that, a warning letter.
That's fine.
There's no consequences. It is just that, like, hey, there was a complaint about your license plate registered to you. That doesn't necessarily mean that the registered owner was behind the wheel. But sometimes you want to know, like, if I'm lending my kid the car and, at 7:30, you were blasting through a school zone and a parent got this license plate. Yeah, guess what, sonny boy, you ain't driving the car no more.
So where would we send that information? Like, where would they send that information? Like, to you?
That is, no, not to me, to the non-emergency number.
No,
888-310-1122.
888
888-310-1122.
11, and they could just leave the message there.
You can just leave a message. Well, no, they'll speak to a live call taker. But just, this is not an urgent matter. That's why it's the non-urgent phone number. They can also report it on online,
Oh, okay.
which is not a billable call for service.
The online,
That'll just be on opp.ca, www.opp.ca.
okay.
It also gives the officers on the road, when they do stop a vehicle and they query possibly the plate or on our system, they'll see maybe there's been 3 reported traffic complaints with regards to this vehicle.
And again, I can't speak for every officer, but I mean, if I saw that one particular driver had 3 warning letters on their record and now I've got them behind the wheel, well, maybe that's going to change my discretion and we're not just going to go with a warning today. Maybe that will be a little financial reminder to slow down a little bit.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on. There are no items under item 14 closed session. And there is nothing to report under item 15, rise and report. Item number 16 is an adjournment. Recommendation reads that this meeting be adjourned. The time is now 10:21. Do I have a mover? Gory. Do I have a seconder? Rob. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you. That was excellent.
Thank you. Do we have a next date for the meeting?